This is how to convert the KORG Cross into a wearable performance keyboard, otherwise known as a Keytar. I chose the KORG KROSS1 for several reasons. Number one, this particular unit is out of warranty, and what we're going to be doing to it will definitely void that warranty. Number two, the Cross weighs in at 9.5 pounds, about 4.3 kilograms, which is comparable to the weight of Keytars that are on the market today. Number three, it's battery powered, meaning one less cord to worry about. Number four, the width is a full 37 inches, also comparable to most Keytars on the market. The beauty of this, though, is in that 37 inches, I get a full 61 keys where I can put in splits. I can play with two hands. In other words, I'm not wasting my left hand doing things like pitch bending and octave switch. I can be a keyboard player, not just someone trying to look like a guitar player. Number five, I think the KORG Cross red bottom makes it just flashy enough to look like a Keytar. And number six, we're going to be doing all of this for less than $40 US, plus the cost of a strap. Materials we'll need, we'll talk more about this later, but a polyurethane plastic. This particular one came from Reynolds Advanced Materials. I believe they're based in Pennsylvania. I'll need a cup to mix the materials in. I'll need a guitar strap posts that I can anchor to the unit, another cup to store all my screws, number two Phillips screwdriver, a little bit of duct tape, some corrugated cardboard, and either scissors or a box knife. So let's get started by first flipping the keyboard over, putting it on a surface that won't scratch the front of the keyboard. You'll notice that there are 26 holes in the back, or 26 screws. Use your number two Phillips screwdriver and drop them all in a cup where you won't lose them. Once you have removed all 26 screws, the back should come off very easily. And notice that there is one connector that needs to be removed. It's a friction connector, so you can simply pull it off. It connects the battery compartment on the back clamshell to the rest of the keyboard, and then the back clamshell should come off completely. One interesting thing you'll see is on the red clamshell bottom, there's this plastic formation here that it sure looks like the KORG engineers were planning on putting a solid piece in the middle that allows them to attach a Keytar strap. We see the same thing on the other side here. They probably abandoned the idea because they realized that attaching it to the bottom clamshell was just not strong enough. Too much of a strain on that plastic, which is why we are going to attach our Keytar to the top black plastic piece. On either side of the keyboard, you'll notice that in the black plastic there are several reinforcement tabs here. Our plan is to pour a section of plastic here next to the heaviest part of the keyboard, which is the keyboard itself, and ultimately drill a small hole in the side which will anchor our post into our newly poured plastic. I've taken my cardboard and cut out these form-fitting pieces so that I can build small dams on either side of the keyboard here, pushing those into place. That'll keep the liquid, the plastic that I pour in this section, from running out into other sections of the keyboard, which obviously would be bad. We're also going to be careful when we pour not to get any on this electronics assembly over here, and certainly not on the keys themselves. So let's take a closer look at the material we will be using. This is polyurethane plastic, mixes in two parts, part A and part B. The mixing instructions are on the back of this particular box. It's fairly easy. It comes out as a low viscosity fluid, which we're going to pour into our little section here, and then it will harden. What we have to be careful about is when mixing these chemicals together, it does generate heat. And our ABS plastic, which is what the KORG is made of, we know that by simply looking right here. It tells us it's ABS along with the date of manufacture. ABS plastic will start to deform at 176 degrees Fahrenheit and will actually liquefy at 220. Obviously not something we want to do. So to avoid this, we're going to pour our plastic in two separate pourings the first about halfway, and then the second to top it off. This particular plastic also is what they call slow setting plastic, which means that the amount of heat released at any one point in time is lower than their fast setting plastic. So with those precautions, we should do fine creating our new plastic block in this section. At the end of the project, you will also need an electric drill with a drill bit to drill a tap hole for the strap mount posts. And one other item I forgot to mention: after you get your dams in place, be sure to use your tape to put small pieces in here to make sure the dams don't migrate during the pouring or curing process. Obviously tape on the outside so it doesn't get involved in the inside of the mold. Before pouring the plastic, you'll notice that on the keyboard left-hand side, or your right since it's upside down, there is the headphone jack, a small little circuit board. This circuit board easily can be removed and pushed back up here while you pour the mold, and then there should be plenty of cord length to just drape over the top and put the unit simply back in place. If you don't have enough cord length, there's actually a cable tie back here that you can remove that cord from the cable tie and give you just a little bit more room. So before you do any pouring into your keyboard, I recommend that you mix a test batch of your plastic. It will start off very liquid, highly viscous, and as it starts to set, it will get more and more gel-like, and you'll get a pretty good estimate of when's the best time to pour it, because you want to pour it when it's not so liquid, but yet it'll still conform to the mold. I did one test run here already. This is the plastic that it produces, a very hard, rigid plastic. This is rough because I had to scrape it out of the mold, but it gives me a good idea playing with that. Also, before pouring, put some type of a shim here underneath the midpoint of the keyboard. That will make the surfaces that we're pouring into level. Okay, so now I have mixed the plastics, and of course using all the precautions of old clothes and gloves and protective eyewear. Let's pour it into our mold. I actually stirred it until it was a little more viscous and not quite so runny, just to make sure it doesn't go everywhere. No spills, thank you, no spills. All right. And now that it's poured in the mold, you see that it is slowly starting to turn white, this particular plastic. By the way, I added one other tool to my project, and that's a roll of paper towels, because one of my dams here was leaking a little bit on one side. And also I waited after the particular liquid had started to turn a little more viscous, or a little less viscous rather, so it would just kind of ooze into there and not be free-flowing. So paper towel is a good idea to keep it away from other parts of the keyboard. But even if it does ooze a little bit under the dams, these areas are not critical for the functioning of the keyboard. You'll notice underneath that it is feeling a little warm. That means the chemical reaction is taking place, but it's not overly warm. Obviously I can touch it with my hand, so it's somewhere around 100-something degrees right now. Well, it's been 24 hours and it looks like our mold has fully set up and is nice and hard. I removed all of the duct tape and what I could here. Some of this is naturally stuck in place. It's not super pretty, but once again, this is in an area that the user won't see once we put the clamshell back on. You'll see in this dam over here, pretty well. I didn't have much leakage around the dam, but up here I did have some leakage, which is what we're trying to avoid. But even if you do, it's leaking into an area of the keyboard that's non-critical. The really important thing here is not to let anything leak from this pool into the keys itself, because we could ultimately end up having some substance leak in, which would prevent the proper movement of this key. So I advise do not overfill this area. I would leave a 1/8 inch gap between this outer surface and the top of your pour. And now comes the second part, not for the faint of heart. If pouring a liquid plastic into your keyboard has not scared you away, then you'll be fine with this step. Here we're going to take the post from the strap and drill a hole into the side here up into our plastic. The placement is not critical. I would obviously try to match in the other side, but anywhere close is good. I'm going to go a little bit below the midpoint here, since my screw is coming upwards at an angle like this into the plastic. So I'm going to drill a tap hole for this screw and then ultimately lock the keyboard strap into place. So I'm taking the guitar strap post, removing the center screw, and I'm actually going to use the post as a template for drilling of the hole to make sure I have the angle right so that the post lays square on the surface, and about there. So now let's take the strap post with the screw and insert it into our tap hole. Now we replace the red clamshell back or bottom of the keyboard, first connecting the friction connector to the battery pack and gently putting it back into place, making sure everything is situated, and replace all the screws, being careful not to over tighten, because remember, you are tightening into plastic. You don't want to strip them, so just mildly hand tighten them. And voila, here is your KORG KROSS1, complete with guitar straps. A quick word about the guitar post and the strap locks. I highly recommend that you go with a locking strap rather than just a friction strap. I've heard of too many stories of the guitar strap coming off of a post like this and an enthusiastic keyboard player launching his $1,000 synthesizer into the audience. So whatever brand you choose, make sure it is a locking variety. Simple little push in the piston, drop it in there, and then it won't come out.
Ladies and gentlemen, introducing to the world the KORG Kross Keytar.